Welcome to the Mid Week Tease with me, Adelle Onyango, where I share some random and not too random thoughts on things. And in this episode, I'm going to open up and talk about something that I thought only I was experiencing, but I'm seeing a lot more women open up about it online now, which is, and for me, it happened just like a switch. I lost probably all interest in dating men. So I'm straight, I'm attracted to men, and I was telling my best friend, it happened like a switch. This is not how I began the year. I began the year setting up my roster. And halfway into setting it up with some pretty good candidates, I just was like, I literally remember asking myself, why am I participating in this? I don't wanna. Like, I really don't want to. And it's not bitterness. I'm just less and less and less and less interested in dating than I used to be. And it's not even that, I've sworn off men or that I've become cynical about love. No, I'm the hugest lover girl. If that's what we call them, that's me. I think what the thing is that I simply don't want my peace touched. I have built the peace in my life brick by brick through tons of tears, tons of sweat, tons of hours spent getting to know myself and still getting to know myself. And I just don't want anything disrupting that. When I mentioned this to one of my girlfriends, one of my best friends, I sent it to her on a voice note and she responded immediately. And she was like, I've just even sat up in bed because I'm like, are you in my head? Because I have been feeling the same thing and wondering, like, is something wrong with me? When you look online, I realized I wasn't alone. It wasn't me and my best friend only. I started seeing more women choosing celibacy. I started seeing more women saying they're deleting their dating apps, more women saying they're taking a break from relationships, more women saying, if it happens, it happens, but I'm not actively searching. You know what I mean? And it got me thinking, what we're witnessing perhaps is not a trend, right? We could be witnessing something so much bigger that lands at the feet of women redefining what a meaningful life looks like for us. And I want to unpack that in this episode. I feel like for a very long time, romance sat at the center of a woman's life. Whether consciously or unconsciously, many of us grew up believing that life unfolded in like a very specific order. You find someone, you fall in love, you get married, you build a family. And everything else was like a by the way and had to fit around that. Even when we had careers or ambitions, there was this like underlying belief that the destination was a romantic relationship. And I truly feel like that's changing. And it's not changing because, as I said earlier, that women have stopped believing in love. I don't think that's the case. But I think what's happened is love is no longer the only thing we're building our lives around. And specifically, romantic love is what I mean when I say that. Romantic love is no longer the only thing we're building our lives around. And I think that's one of the biggest cultural shifts happening among women today. And then there's the added element for very many women. Of course, we still have tons of women who are still very marginalized, and we still have to fight for their rights and for their equity. But quite a few women finally have choice. Finally. Now, I need us to remember that historically, marriage wasn't simply about romance. It was about survival. And so for a long time in history, women relied on marriage for financial security or like social acceptance, legal protection, housing, and even just basic respectability. Honestly, when I was married, there were people who treated me with more respect. Even in my own family, even in my own family, like if that basic respectability. And there's work that a psychologist called Eli Finkel did, and there's a specific book actually they wrote called The All or Nothing Marriage, and it explains that as society has changed, so has the purpose of relationships, right? So centuries ago, marriage was largely about survival. But today, there are very many people who are seeking relationships for emotional fulfillment, personal growth, companionship, even, which I think is such a beautiful shift. But it also means that relationships have become optional in a way that they weren't for very many women, right? And so if you look at many women today, and again, this is not the highest percentage of women. I hate that social media makes it seem like all women now have access to these things. It's not the case. We still have many more women who are marginalized across the globe, globe. But there are many women today who can support themselves, who can travel, who can own businesses, buy land, vote, open a bank account, rent or buy homes, raise children by themselves, create community that don't involve men. Our lives no longer have to begin after we meet a man, you know? And when something becomes a choice instead of a necessity, then of course the way we approach it changes, right? And let's center on peace, because I truly believe, for me personally, that's why I'm just like icked out. I couldn't find another word, guys. I'm icked out when I think of dating, because I'm like, I know you're going to disrupt my peace, either in a small way, a medium way, or a major shakeup, and I just don't want any parts of it. And it's almost like peace is becoming like a new relationship standard. And this is very fascinating, because whenever this conversation comes up online, people immediately jump to, oh, women's standards are too high. They're like unattainable. They're not realistic. But I don't know if that's what's happening. You know, I just think maybe peace has simply become one of our standards. And after you've done all that work in regulating your nervous system, healing from unhealthy dynamics, unpacking your traumas, you know, after you've experienced what emotional stability feels like, you obviously are going to become more protective over it. I'm pretty sure I've told you about this book before, The Body Keeps the Score. And in that book, he reminds us that our nervous systems are constantly scanning for cues of safety or danger. So healing isn't only changing your thoughts, it's also changing what your body is willing to tolerate. So when women say, I don't want my peace disturbed, just as I have said, that doesn't always mean that we're trying to avoid discomfort. Sometimes it's just us recognizing the cost. This is what my friend and I talked about, the cost of chronic stress. Now, here's where I want us to be very honest, right? There's a huge difference between protecting your peace and avoiding intimacy. And, you know, if we're thinking about like attachment theories, we've talked about this on very many of our shows before, how our early childhood experiences shape how we approach closeness. So for some women, like myself, stepping away from dating may be a healthy, intentional pause. But for others, it may be fear that is disguised as empowerment. And the question isn't, should I date? I think the question is, why am I making this choice? And what I think is super important when you're navigating this is self-awareness. Another thing to think about is how women are redefining what a meaningful life looks like. This, to me, is the super important part. Because when I look around, I see women pouring themselves into things that previous generations were often told came second or didn't come at all. So, for example, I remember in February, I went on my solo trip to the beach for my birthday. And while I was there, I met so many women, some even in their 20s. I think there was one who was on a solo trip and she was like turning 24 or 25, right? These are things that previous generations of women either didn't have access to or were told not to prioritize, right? So it's things like traveling, it's things like starting a business, going back to school, creating art, building wellness routines, growing our own food, joining hiking groups and running groups, learning instruments. Shout out to anybody else who's learning the drums like me. You know, you could find that women are reading again, or even exploring spirituality, stepping away from religion, moving their bodies because it feels good, not because somebody else is looking. Women are creating homes that they genuinely enjoy living in. And these things are not distractions or things that we're doing to pass time while we are waiting for a relationship. No, these things are our lives. They are meaningful to us. I want to borrow from some work by another psychologist called Martin Seligman, and they are one of the founders of positive psychology. And they argue that a meaningful life isn't built on one pillar. His model suggests that flourishing in life comes from a combination of positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, positive meaning, and accomplishments. And if you notice just by what I've said, relationships are important, but they're only one part of a flourishing life and they're not the whole thing. And I think for the longest time, women were told relationships and intimate relationships with men were the only thing, only ingredient to a flourishing, meaningful life. And now we are realizing that we have choice and we're adding to what a meaningful life looks like to us. You know what I mean? And then there's the other thing that is so important to me. And when I started being more intentional about it, then my interest in dating men reduced. I'm still attracted to men, but I'm just like, oh. And the other thing is the rise of female friendships. I get so excited when I talk about this because I genuinely believe I have the best women in my circle. My inner circle is about 3 women. And then, you know, my ancestors are so wonderful that I was blessed with more. And so, you know, there's outpouring of more. I'm blessed to be working primarily with women. Um, but anyway, back to female friendships. Because, as I said earlier, romance with a man is no longer sitting at the center. Something else is expanding to fill that space. Friendship. I don't think I'm the only one who's noticed it. I don't think I'm the only one who's noticed it and enjoying it and feeling it. I remember remarking to someone that all the things that I was desperately looking for in men that I was in relationships with, I'm finding in 2 places. I'm finding it in myself and I'm finding it with my female friendships. My core 3 women, oh, they love me unprovoked. I don't even have to remind them of things. Like they will send voice notes just to check up on me. They will cheer me on. Like now we're working towards putting up the For Mannerless Women live. It's a lot of work, so many moving parts. Of course, there are bits where I'm anxious. One of my friends is just constantly like, and she's in the industry, so she understands. She's constantly just pouring words of affirmation. And I remember almost tearing up on my morning walk once as I was listening to a voice note from her because she said, Adele, what do you need? Tell me what you need. I'm going to make it happen. Do you know how good that felt? Ah, that's one. My other girlfriend just keeps sending me like, hey, just checking up on you. And I love her because she always ends her messages with, I love you so much. Always. It doesn't matter if I'm calling her for directions. Every phone call, every interaction ends with, I love you. You know what I mean? I have another friend who she is just like she holds me up. I think she knows me like the back of her hand. She was the first person I ever told about even my divorce and things like that. She's been in my corner for years and still is. Still is. And when I go sleep over at her house, she dotes on me. Do you know, like unprovoked. That's just mine. And I know as you're listening to this, you can name the women in your lives who are showing up for you. And what I'm very proud of is the last couple of years, I've been very intentional about pouring into my female friendships. I just kind of wanted to expand what relationships look like for me. I think we're socialized to always know how to pour into romantic relationships, specifically with men. But it's like we're taught like our female friendships are just there for us to pass time until we find the man. And I don't want that, you know? And so I was like, I'm going to be very intentional about my friends. And I love it. I know you've noticed it. You're seeing women taking more girls' trips. They're starting book clubs. They're hosting dinners together. They're creating WhatsApp groups where they actually become each other's support systems. They're going for concerts together. They're celebrating each other's birthdays with intention. They're building businesses together. They're showing up at each other's events. They're supporting each other through, if it's career changes, life changes, joy, grief. And for so long, we've treated friendships like that relationship that fills the gaps until romance arrives. But now I'm finding that we're changing that around and saying friendship isn't secondary. What if it is actually foundational? You know? And research shows that strong friendships improve our physical health, our mental health, and even longevity. This is documented research, guys. If you want to go and read up about it, it's called Friendships: The Evolution, Biology, and Extraordinary Power of Life's Fundamental Bond, and it's by Lydia Denworth. Friendship is not a luxury. It's one of the deepest forms of human connection that we have. And, to borrow from Bell Hooks, love isn't confined to romance. Love can exist through care, through community, through mutual growth and showing up for one another. I think that's why you're finding so many women are intentional about building communities with other women. It's not that we're saying, fuck it, romance doesn't matter. But it's because we now understand that one person, our spouse, our male spouse, male partner, was never meant to carry all of our emotional needs. Let's get back to expensive. Dating is expensive, and I mean emotionally expensive. The emotional labor of starting to get to know someone again. Hey, one of my talking stages, I think you could call him that. We had those conversations of, oh, what sort of ABC do you like? And I remember after you asked me that, I was just like, oh, I cannot do this again. I don't wanna. I don't wanna. Get me out of here. I don't wanna. The emotional labor of getting to know someone again, explaining yourself again, navigating mixed signals, managing disappointment, wondering where you stand, holding hope, letting go, starting again. Guys, self-regulation. There's been research on self-regulation that suggests that emotional effort is a real psychological resource. The way you see financial resource, this is a psychological resource. So sometimes women aren't saying, I don't believe in love. Sometimes what we're actually saying is, I don't have the emotional bandwidth right now. Stacky, I don't want. And that's a very different statement. It changes how we look at stepping away from dating. And it's not about giving up. It's about just redirecting your energy towards the life that you're building. Guys, I feel so whole, so full. I love how I'm loving on myself. I love the wellness routines I've created. I'm loving the life I'm living. I'm loving getting to know myself again. That's where I want to redirect my energy towards. So I don't think women are abandoning romance. I think many women are decentering it. And those two things are not the same. Romantic love can still be beautiful. Marriage can still be beautiful. Partnership can still be beautiful. But now we're no longer like defining happiness or saying that happiness only exists there in romance, in marriage, in partnership, right? We're no longer saying, oh, we can't live until we get a romantic love. Like, I think we are understanding that love exists in so many other spaces, in so many other types of relationships. It exists within us. And a full life doesn't have to have a man in it, a romantic interest that is in it. And we already have a beautiful life and we can pour into it. So, what I will leave you with is this question. If romance wasn't the measure of whether your life was meaningful, what would you build instead? Because there's a shift happening. Don't get left behind. Like sometimes I see women panicking about being single, about, by this age they should have done. And I'm like, bro, why are you choosing to be left behind? when it comes to this awakening women are having, because women are moving from asking, how do I build my life around love? And now we're beginning to ask, how do I build a life that I genuinely love? And how liberating is that? How liberating is that? And if you resonate with what I'm saying in this episode, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, especially because I'm in the thick of navigating this. Wherever you're listening to this, please let me know. Have you found yourself decentering romance again? What has moved into the center of your life instead? Please drop a comment wherever you're listening to this on, and share this episode with someone who this is going to resonate with them as well, and someone that you love. Those female friendships we're talking about, share this with them. Thanks for listening to the Mid Week Tease, a Legally Clueless Africa production. Episodes go out every Wednesday, and you can learn more about us by going to legallycluelessafrica.com.